I put this slide up and then I laughed because it seems I only have one outfit. And I would also point out I spent $2 at my local resource and recycling shop. We attended this big global conference and we kind of stood up for New Zealand and what we stood for, and they were very, very long hours. I think our longest day was about 18 hours. But the important thing about that meeting was that, and this is really interesting because it's not just a science community and it's not just a government kind of officials community, it's both. And so you had both elements in the room who had to agree by the end of the week. And there were moments where the chair was getting a bit frustrated and a bit concerned we weren't going to agree. But 133 countries at the end of that meeting all agreed that we were in trouble, that we needed globally to do something and that we would make some commitments. What you may have seen in terms of the headlines about that is the reports about, so the media being the media, please, went straight to the tough stuff. So 1 million species are at risk of extinction, there's a nature crisis, 1 million species are at risk of extinction. But there was so much more to that report. And what that report did in its very last chapter was to say that if the people, the local governments, the communities, the Indigenous people, the federal governments, the national governments, if they make changes now, if they make transformative change in our education, in our society, kind of social elements, in our science, in how we apply our knowledge, we can turn this around. And we kind of need to, because what we keep forgetting is we're all connected to it. So we know that New Zealand kids are among the most obese in the OECD. The beauty of things like the Kids Plant Out is that it's getting kids outside, it's teaching them to plant, which I would have benefited from, just saying. And that it helps them, when they're out and about, it helps their mental health, and we're not able to provide that for them without that connection to nature. The other thing that terrifies me, and I presented this slide to the New Zealand Area Schools Conference last year, 83% of British children surveyed can't recognise a bumblebee. 23% can't recognise a robin, 40% don't know what a dandelion is. That's really concerning, right? Like, we're kind of okay now because most of us are, if you like, just off the farm. My grandparents were farmers, I'm sure many of yours were, some of you may still be farmers. But lots of us, 87% of us, now live in the cities, and we are losing our connection to the thing that defines us. It's fine, Rachel. So it's really, really important that we keep connected wherever we can. And the reason for that is my favourite quote from my favourite man, who I'm secretly in love with. No one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody has to go out and cuddle a kakapo. Don't do that, they're a bit yuck. But what it means is we have to bring them that experience. So we can bring them that experience through plant-outs, we can bring them that experience through storytelling, we can bring them that experience through a myriad ways to suit a myriad ways of learning. But the key is we have to bring it to them. So now for the hope part. So that was the bummed out part. And I did want to provide some hope, or I'll never be invited to speak again. So there is a lot to be hopeful about. And the fact that you're all here today, the fact that I know every single person in this room is connected in some way to breathing life back into our native wildlife, our natural places, our things that define us, our hearts, that gives me hope. I kind of like this slide, so partly because that's my little boy. I don't know who that man is. Not a good parent. This is on a reserve on Mount Cass, which is not far from where I live. It's about 31 hectares. There's not even a sign on it. I got to a point in my career where I was starting to feel like I was talking a lot of talk and not walking a lot of walk. And so I asked the local dog office if there was anything around that we could look after. And they presented this reserve, which they had fenced, kind of done nothing else with. And so we, in the bustling metropolis of Waikato, where there is a community of maybe 200 households, maybe, we held a trapping workshop on the weekend. It was a heinous, terrible day, and kind of most kind of engaged in environmental action type community, something like that. But they saw the opportunity and they threw themselves at it. It was a horrible day, and then after the training of how to set the traps, 25 of us wandered up a hill. Now because this reserve had not had a lot of love, it had had a fence, it's very, very, so I completely failed, because you know how I said I don't like to walk and I don't like to go up hills. So this is like on the side of Mount Cass, and it's like this, and there's no tracks. But we all went up anyway, and we've kind of adopted this place, and partly because our pub burned down 5 years ago, and so therefore we have no other way of socially interacting, but partly because we care. This is a place that means something to me and my community, and so we're trying really hard to breathe some life back into what turns out to be a secret treasure trove of some of the most amazing threatened species and Indigenous values you could possibly imagine, including being a place where at least 5 species or more used to roam, kiwi, Haast eagle, everything you could imagine. And because of that, we love it. And the beauty of what we're doing now, I suppose, I was thinking about Ara Kākāriki, and then I was thinking about my role as the Regional Ops Director, and I was thinking about how cool it is that where we stand here is part of a story that starts with Araki. New Zealand's highest mountain, one of the most important and spiritual places, particularly for Ngāi Tahu. Then through the beach forest, where you find, Ara Kākāriki, or Kākāriki karaka, still existing, down through the drylands, where you find the very endangered sow thistle, down through the braided rivers, down through to Waihora, where you might be lucky enough to spot a cockatoo, and out to sea where you might see a heaps dolphin. What a great place that we have. What a great place that we stand. And, when I came back to the South Island, I had lived in a lot of places and I'd travelled to a lot of places. I'd been to every predator-free island you could imagine, and I kind of went, meh, until I thought about everything that this place stands for, and everything that we've got here and what we can breathe back. So I want to talk a little bit about the power of place. It seems to me that we have to get past this idea, and also dogs, I'm not just thinking. We can't just continue to put glass jars over things and preserve things in isolation. Because we can't be connected to something if we're not part of that. We can't leave it up to a government department, to a regional council, to an agency, to a community group. That's not going to work. We're never ever going to get it over the line. We can't pretend we exist outside of our environment, and we can't put the environment over there for us to protect but not be engaged with. And we have to remember, ko'o te taio ko'o. So we are the nature, and the nature is us. So if I think about the journey that the department has been on for the last little while, we've probably moved from species to landscapes, right? And that's really challenging, because try to tell the story of a landscape to people and their eyes glaze over. So there is an element of using species as a Trojan horse, but in terms of how we protect things, what we're interested in is the big picture. And if I think about the work we're doing with freshwater, and we've got some really key priority catchments from a Te Papa Awhai Department of Conservation perspective, we've gone past, well, we'll plant along here, and that's protecting that area too. Well, we need a lawyer, and we need a planner, and we need a scientist to go in and deal with the advocacy element for the RMA, and we need some fences, we need some, you know what I mean? Like we've moved past things in one little place to how do we all combine our sort of powers and our expertise to actually look after the broader thing with us in it. Because we all exist within a landscape. We live within a landscape. We benefit from the landscapes. We all pretty much eat from the landscapes. So how do we do that in a way that allows us to have a place within the place? So now we're kind of working more at that landscape level, and we are broadening our horizons and broadening our perspectives on what that means in terms of we don't have to do it all as DOC, but we will certainly work and support others who want to do it with us. And so we're seeing a lot of benefit from that, and you will all know that because you're all working with us. But the best thing is the next part. I stole this, by the way, and so, by the way, I've completely broken the rules. There's like a DOC template. You're supposed to do your presentations with the DOC logos and the template and the thing, and you're definitely not allowed to steal photos off the internet. And I stole that off the Ara Kākāriki Facebook page. Sorry. At about 4:27. So I love this because we've suddenly gone from this, something that exists over there that we definitely all care about, that we've probably never seen, to this. This is people in a landscape, rejuvenating a landscape, and that is where we need to be if we're going to make a difference collectively in terms of turning things around. Yeah, so people love trapping. I particularly like, so I wasn't clever or fast enough to get photos of the work of Back to Nature Conservation Trust and all the associated people working within that frame, predator-free Back to Nature. But the principle is there, right? I get it. I get what you're doing and I love it. I love two things mostly about this. I love that guy. He's had a big day. That's how I'm going to look in about 2 hours. This guy over here is James Wilson, and he took it upon himself to announce that Picton would become predator-free about a year before the Prime Minister did. None of them had ever set a trap. I don't know if you've been to Picton. There's a small little town surrounded by quite a lot of bush, and he was sort of scathingly saying to me that the Prime Minister at the time had pinched this idea. That is the most ridiculous trap I've ever seen. So, are any of you trapping nerds? People like to trap around here? Okay, good. So if you look closely at that trap, he's got I think he's got 150, and then he's got some spouting, and then in the middle he's got another little box. Which has 2 mouse traps in it, and then there's some more spouting, and then there's another .1. They designed it at the pub, to be fair. And it's a very complex way of engaging with the nature, but bless his enthusiasm, because predator-free Picton, well, the Picton Dawn chorus is now kind of going full steam, and we see that replicated all over the country, and the benefits are huge, right? So, my favourite story about this is this story. You're probably willing to go home. I'm nearly finished, don't worry.